What do you think about, we're in a space as well, there's so many different things happening. AI being one of the bigger things that is really happening, that people all over are trying to figure out, how do I adapt that? How do I input that into
Yeah,
my organization?
yeah.
You're in that childcare space. Are you guys utilizing AI? And if so, how? Or are you guys looking at it? What does AI look like
Uh,
in your?
we are using it a little bit around writing job descriptions. We have somebody who wants to hire somebody, and the way we have it now, or had it, was, okay, manager, you want to hire somebody to do such and such a job, figure out what it looks like, write down all the criteria for it, and it would take forever to get from the time that somebody said they needed somebody to the time they hired anybody, because that's not their full-time job. It's something they do once in a while. So we've been using that to really cut down the amount of time to write a job description, and it's become, we actually have somebody on our HR staff who's gotten very engaged in all this. I have been asking about, are there other ways that we could use AI? I have to admit that that's not something that I'm kind of too old. I mean, when I went to graduate
Stop
school,
it.
I was 30 years old before I saw a computer. So, it, you know, but I have a son who has an MBA and got a certificate in AI, and he's posting stuff on LinkedIn every day. So every day I get a little bit of education about AI
Yeah.
from my son from LinkedIn. So he doesn't tell me anything, but I am connected to him. I think that there's a lot of stuff that we do in terms of eligibility and need, and all these rules that have to be followed, and it takes forever to train people. And I keep thinking, couldn't we, you know, take this documentation they have to get us and put it through some sort of, I'm going to call it a blender, and then say, yeah, they're eligible or not eligible, or they're eligible for this. I mean, there's got to be a way that we could, because we can't just keep adding people. We don't think that that's going to be the future of. You can't
Correct.
just throw people at a problem. You got to figure out how to do. I mean, we did. When I started, we had paper timesheets, and I had a CIO at the time who said, we should get time clocks. It would make things a lot easier. And no one I mean, we're talking, 20 years ago, no one had time clocks. And I said, well, that's a good idea. And so, we went from it was two people managing 300 timesheets, a time period,
Wow.
to three people handling 1,400 timesheets.
Yeah. Yeah.
So those are the kind of efficiencies, that.
And I think you're in a really sweet space because you talk about what I'm hearing is that you have a team that does a lot of research. A lot of data
Yeah,
is being
yeah,
gathered. And when you think about all the data, all the research, and you put that into a pool of AI, as you mentioned, that it does have HIPAA compliance and all these different things, it really does take away those jobs no one wants to do, right? And allows people to
right.
do what they want
Yeah,
to do and love to do. And I think that's really happened in the healthcare space. I've seen that as well. Is that people were really overworked, overwhelmed when it came to the pandemic and what that looked like. But I believe if we had AI in place that maybe kind of alleviated some of those admin tasks or the things they didn't
yeah,
want to do, it would allow people to really focus on the care of,
yeah.
grandma, grandpa, just people in general. Um, so yeah, I think AI is definitely here. It is trying to find out what works, and I think there's so much opportunity in the community engagement. I
Yeah.
think that's big. If we can, out of sight, out of mind. But how do
Yeah.
we communicate with our communities? So I love that. I love that you guys, even though you say you're too old for AI, there's just a
It,
need,
it,
and
yeah.
there's actually something that could help you in this
Well,
space.
I was joking about, when I went to graduate school, I'd never seen a computer. I went back to school to get the PhD in 1981. I got to UCLA, and you had to take a statistics class the very first quarter,
Hmm.
and you had to do something where you actually had to use a key punch. Back in the day, those IBM key punch things. If you wanted
Hmm.
to analyze data, you had to key punch it in on one of those IBM cards, and then if you made a mistake, then you had to start over again, and you fed it all in. Well, by the end of that quarter, Apple was donating Apple IIe's to universities all over the country. So we got these things, and all of a sudden, I went, oh wow, just typing stuff. I said, I
Hmm.
can save myself a year on this dissertation that I'm eventually going to have to do if I can type it into the computer, so that if I need to make changes to it, I can just do it. I don't
Yeah,
have
yeah,
to
yeah.
do, if I make a mistake, I don't have to do whiteout. I don't, all those things that you did with typewriters, you no longer had to do. So I, when I wrote my dissertation, which was almost 300 pages, I'll never do that again. I had a daisy wheel printer connected to my computer, and I had to feed in every sheet of paper into this daisy wheel printer in order to be able to get it out. And it took me a week to print out my dissertation. But even that was faster than it would have been if I had, had somebody type it for me. By the time my wife wrote her dissertation, so I finished in '86, she finished in '90. By then, laser printers had come up. We printed her dissertation in an hour.
Wow.
I mean, so I get the fact that there's ways that technology
Hmm.
works for you,
Hmm.
and we're pretty sophisticated here. I mean, I got a great tech guy and a whole
I
team
love
of
it.
tech people, but it's not something I don't. I'm having a hard time grasping what AI could do for you, other than, you know, it seems like it would make sense, but
Yeah.
I'm not